Imagine standing in the middle of the Syrian desert in the year 950. The sun has set, the dunes look identical in every direction, and your life depends on knowing exactly where you are. In this era, there were no satellites, no digital screens, and no magnetic compasses that could give you the precision you needed. To survive, you had to look up. You had to speak to the stars. In the bustling, high-walled city of Aleppo, one woman held the keys to this celestial language. Her name was Al-Ijliya bint Al-Ijliya, known to history simply as Mariam Al-Astrolabiya. While common law often paints her as a myth or a legend, historical records, specifically the theorist of Ibn al-Nadim, confirm she was a master of the most complex technology of her age, the astrolabe. This wasn't just a tool, it was the world's first analog computer, a medieval GPS crafted from brass that allowed humans to navigate time, space, and faith. Today we uncover the life of the woman who sat at the intersection of mathematical theory and metallurgical precision. We are going beyond the surface to look at the gears, the math, and the iron will of the engineer who gave the world its bearings. To understand Mariam's rise, we must look at the world she inhabited. 10th century Aleppo wasn't just a military outpost. Under the Hamdanid Emir Saif al-Dawla, it was the intellectual beating heart of the world. Imagine a city where poets like Al-Mutanabi and philosophers like Al-Farabi walked the same streets, debating the nature of the soul and the structure of the cosmos. This was a mini-renaissance. The Hamdanid court was a central node in a global network of scholarship that stretched from Al-Andalus in Spain to the edges of Central Asia. In this environment, the sciences of the ancients, astronomy, mathematics, and geometry, were not just hobbies for the elite, they were essential for the functioning of the state. Taxes were calculated by the harvest, harvests were dictated by the seasons, and the seasons were tracked by the stars. It was in this atmosphere of intense patronage and intellectual competition that Mariam entered the scene. She was born into a legacy of heavy metal and high math. Her father was an apprentice to Bitulus, the most famous astrolabe maker in Baghdad. He didn't just teach his daughter a trade, he passed down a secret science that required the hands of a jeweler and the mind of a physicist. Before we can appreciate Mariam's genius, we have to understand the machine she built. An astrolabe is a sophisticated instrument used to solve over 300 different types of astronomical problems. In the hands of a trained traveler, it could determine the time of day or night, calculate the height of a mountain, find the direction of prayer from anywhere on Earth, and even predict the rising of the moon. Constructing one required a polymathic mind. You had to be a master of spherical trigonometry to calculate the stereographic projections of the sky, essentially flattening a 3D sphere of stars onto a 2D brass plate. You had to be a metallurgist to cast, hammer, and polish brass to a mirror finish, and you had to be a calligrapher to engrave complex coordinates into metal where a single slip of the wrist could ruin months of work. Mariam didn't just assemble these, she engineered them from scratch. Her work was characterized by a level of precision that was unheard of in the 10th century. While others built tools, Mariam built working models of the universe that could fit in the palm of a hand. Imagine Mariam's workshop in Aleppo. The air is thick with the smell of burning charcoal and molten copper. The sound of rhythmic hammering on brass fills the room. This was not a place of delicate theories, it was a place of fire and sweat. The process began with the martyr, the heavy outer casing of the astrolabe. Mariam would have to smelt a specific alloy of brass, one that was hard enough to survive years of travel, but soft enough to be engraved. Once the matter was cast, she would begin the process of planishing, hammering the metal repeatedly to remove air bubbles and create a perfectly flat surface. Next came the plates. Each plate represented a specific latitude. If you were in Aleppo, you used one plate. If you traveled to Mecca, you switched to another. Mariam had to calculate the al-tazimuth lines for each city. This required a deep understanding of the Earth's curvature. If her math was off by even 0.5%, the traveler using her device would end up miles off course in the desert. This was the burden of the engineer. Her precision was the only thing standing between a successful journey and a fatal error. The most beautiful part of Mariam's work, and the most difficult, was the Rete. This was the top layer of the astrolabe, a delicate lace-like star map. The Rete had to be carved away so you could see the plates beneath it. Each pointer or dagger on the Rete represented a specific major star, like Sirius or Betelgeuse. Mariam had to cut these star points with surgical precision, but she also added an element of art. Her Retes were famous for their aesthetic beauty, designed with flowing vine-like patterns that mirrored the vine of the universe. When the Rete was rotated around a central pin, it simulated the movement of the heavens across the horizon. Mariam was effectively creating a time machine. By turning the dial, a user could see exactly where the stars would be 3 months from now, or where they were 10 years ago. It was a level of control over time and space that felt like magic to the uninitiated. Mariam's reputation eventually reached the citadel of Aleppo, the seat of Saif al-Dawla. The emir was a man who valued excellence above all else. He didn't hire Mariam because of a social quota. He hired her because her instruments were the most accurate in the Levant. This patronage was a massive turning point. It meant Mariam was no longer just a local craftswoman. She was a state-sponsored engineer. She had access to the finest imported brass and silver. She was consulted by the court's lead astronomers and navigators. Her career challenges many modern misconceptions about women in the Islamic Golden Age. While the era was certainly patriarchal, it was also a meritocracy of the mind. If you could prove your math, the doors of the palace were open to you. Mariam wasn't an anomaly. She was part of a tradition of female scholars and engineers whose names were often omitted from later history books, but whose impact was etched into the very tools that moved the world. Why was the astrolabe so vital to the Islamic world? Specifically, it was because of the unique requirements of the faith. Muslims needed to find the Qibla, the direction of the Kaaba in Mecca, from thousands of miles away. They needed to know the exact moments for the 5 daily prayers, which were dictated by the length of shadows and the position of the sun. Mariam's astrolabes were the GPS of the soul. They allowed the faithful to align themselves with the divine, no matter where they were on the map. For a desert caravan, her device was a lifeline. It allowed them to travel at night to avoid the blistering heat of the day, using the stars as their guides. Every time a traveler successfully navigated a mountain pass or a ship found its port, Mariam's engineering was the silent hero behind the journey. The title Al-Astrolabiya wasn't just a nickname, it was a professional certification. In the medieval Islamic world, your name often reflected your mastery. To be called the astrolabe maker by your peers meant you had reached the pinnacle of the guild. Mariam likely taught others. In her father's tradition, she would have taken on apprentices, passing down the formulas for the stereographic projections. We have to imagine her teaching young students how to use a gnomon to measure the sun's shadow, and how to translate those shadows into the markings on a brass plate. She was the guardian of a lineage of knowledge that traced back to the Greeks, but was perfected in the workshops of Syria. Let's look at the martyr once more. The rim was divided into 360 degrees, or 24 hours. Mariam had to ensure the center pin, called the axis, was perfectly centered. If it was off by the width of a hair, the Rete would wobble, and every calculation would be invalid. She used a tool called an alidade, a sighting bar on the back of the astrolabe. You would hold the astrolabe up by a ring, look through the pinholes of the alidade at a star, and read the altitude off the scale. Mariam's alidades were known for their balance. They had to be heavy enough to hang perfectly vertical, but light enough to move with a finger's touch. This balance of weight and physics is what separated her work from the mass-produced versions of the time. While Mariam worked in Aleppo, her influence radiated outward. The astrolabe was the ancestor of almost every navigational tool we have today. When the Crusaders returned to Europe, they brought back Islamic astrolabes, which jump-started European astronomy. Mariam's precision designs eventually led to the development of the sextant used by explorers like Magellan and Columbus. Even the modern chronometer and the satellites of NASA are the direct descendants of the logic Mariam used. She was one of the first humans to successfully digitize the sky, to turn the infinite movement of the stars into a predictable mechanical system. One of the tragedies of history is that very few original 10th century astrolabes have survived the centuries of war and upheaval in Syria. We have descriptions, and we have later instruments modelled after her designs, but the Mariam originals are rare. However, her legacy isn't found in a museum, it's found in the Fihrist, the great catalogue of knowledge. Because she was documented by her contemporaries, her existence is a bridge for us to understand a lost world of female innovation. She represents thousands of women whose names were lost to time, but whose hands built the foundations of our modern technology. Mariam Al-Astrolabiya proves that the stars have always been within our reach, provided we have the right tools and the right minds to interpret them. She took a complex, abstract universe and distilled it into a device that could fit in the palm of a hand. She wasn't just making tools, she was making the world navigable. She was a woman of fire, brass, and math. If you enjoyed this journey into the life of Aleppo's greatest engineer, subscribe to Muslim Biographies. We continue to honor the legacy of the innovators who charted the course for the modern world, because history has the answers if you know where to look.